Hey everyone. All right, welcome to my kitchen. We are just relaxing and cooking. We've got some candles going, had some music going. We're just in like chill out, mode. And so I want to bake with you guys. So thank you guys so much for joining me. This is Jamie with Sweet Pickins, and we appreciate you guys checking out our channel. Make sure you like and subscribe. If you also want to follow us on Instagram or Facebook, you just have to type in Sweet Pickins Reno, and it's Pickins Reno, and you can follow us there. We do stories every day, decorating, DIYing, crafting, all the things. So today we are gonna make Zuppa Toscana soup. So if you guys have had that at the Olive Garden, I have my own version of this soup, and it is definitely a favorite in the house. So I want to share my recipe with you guys. So make sure you follow along, take some notes. It's really simple. The one thing I will tell you guys is it is time consuming and just a tiny bit expensive, if you want to call it expensive. I honestly haven't figured out the cost, but it's a little bit more. It's probably in like the $15-ish range to make a crock pot of soup. So some people may think that that's expensive. For me, I look at it as, how many meals we're gonna get out of this, and we're gonna share with our kids. And so for me, it is actually fairly reasonable. And I'm gonna show you a few ways how to get the most bang for your buck with some of the ingredients. Okay, so let's get started. I always do mine in a crock pot, always. If you don't have a crock pot big enough, don't worry about it. Throw it on the, in a big pot on the stove. I just find a crock pot works so good. So mine is already plugged in. It's been plugged in for about 30 minutes. It is on high. This is a soup that I like to make on high, cook on high, and then be done. It's not something you want it to slow cook all day, because some of your ingredients are just gonna get mushy, especially your potatoes, and you really don't want that. You want there to be some onions in your soup, not to where they're so translucent and like dissolved away. So that is a little bit of a challenge when you're thinking of making the soup. But the way to get around that is pre-cook everything. So yesterday I pre-did a few things ahead of time to get ready for this today. So the key to success on this is make sure all your elements are cooked before you put them in the crock pot. There's only one thing that really needs to cook in the crock pot, and that is kale. And some people really don't like kale, so you can omit that. I will say it changes the soup drastically. However, kale is not a have to make this recipe work. So let's get started. So this is my version of the recipe. If you've had Zuppa Toscana soup at Olive Garden, it may taste a little bit different. This is as close to the recipe as I could get, and I think it's extremely close. All right, you're gonna start with chicken broth, not chicken stock. So you're gonna want 8 cups of chicken broth. Now I will say, I use the Great Value brand from Walmart, and it works great. And it's very cost effective. So don't think that you have to use the name brands, because you don't. All right, then you're gonna want 2 cups of heavy whipping cream. Now, if you don't have 2 cups, or you don't wanna put 2 cups in, or whipping cream is very expensive. This is one of the elements that we'll add a little bit. You can do 1 cup of heavy whipping cream and 1 cup of milk if you want. I like mine to be rich, and whipping cream is a little bit thicker, so it does help to thicken up the soup a little bit. So it's 2 cups of heavy whipping cream. Okay. All right. Then you're gonna want to use a small onion. Dice up your onion. I like to use a white onion. However, today I only had a red onion, and that is totally fine. Don't think that this recipe has to be exact. You know, you can omit or change things if you need to some. So a red onion is not going to make that big of a difference. So I like to just use a small onion, and if you don't like onion, you don't have to put this in. However, it definitely makes a difference without onion. So I'm gonna get this in here. So this is one small onion that I diced up. Okay, so that being said, this is starting your base. You've got your broth and your heavy whipping cream, and you've got your onions. If you want your onions to simmer and just hang out for a little bit, you absolutely can, but it's really not necessary. But if you want to cook those down some because you don't love onions, but you want the taste, then, you know, because some people don't like onions, but they don't mind the taste of it if it's cooked down. So if you need it cooked down, go ahead and just let this sit for just a little bit. All right, the next thing that you're gonna wanna do, again, all this stuff is already done. So I took 6 russet potatoes. Russet potatoes are really important to use russet potatoes. They work better in this recipe. So what I did is I took the 6 russet potatoes, I peeled them, I cut them, diced them up, not tiny, but small. And so this is 6 worth. You can see there's 6 in here, and it depends on the size of your russet potatoes. If you have giant ones, you don't need 6. Mine were just medium size, no big deal. So I did use the 6 that I normally use. And I actually already cooked these in the pan, so they are perfect. You could eat them right now. This is one of the reasons why you don't want this to sit all day in your crock pot, because these become mush. So go ahead and pour those in. All right. So the next thing is bacon. So I cooked an entire pack of bacon yesterday. Have to be honest, I did sneak a couple pieces. So we're not gonna use this whole bag of bacon, but I cooked this yesterday. I made breakfast for supper yesterday. So while I was cooking the sausage for supper yesterday, I since everything was going, I just grabbed another pan and got this bacon done. So these are things that you can get done ahead of time. So I like to cut my bacon in half and then cook it that way so they're not super long pieces. So I'm gonna use 6 to 8 pieces of bacon. So these are halves. We're obviously not gonna put them in like this. So what I do is I just kind of break them up like this. Bacon is kind of expensive, I understand. So if you want to help on the budget, again, these are just budget tips, you could use bacon bits. Those are already cut down for you, they're easy. So you definitely could use bacon bits. I would probably use 3 tablespoons or so, definitely a bacon bits. So we're gonna I'm just kind of tearing these down into small little pieces in here. I will say, I have made the recipe without bacon when I haven't had bacon. Bacon just tastes good. However, it does not make a difference actually in this recipe whatsoever if you have bacon or not. So we're just gonna grab a few pieces. We'll have some bacon left over, which is exciting for the family. We love bacon. So I just like to put them small. I try not to get them too big. I make them bigger than, you know, a bacon bit size, but not too much bigger. So we'll just get these all taken down, and we're gonna stir this at the end. So just kind of throw it in there. It's not a huge deal. And you could pre-do this if you don't wanna do this. Like if you wanna just get it out of the pan and crunch it all up and have it ready, you absolutely could do that. Okay, so that is roughly 6 full pieces of bacon. That's kind of what I'm adding in here. And the reason why I said 6 to 8, I'm only doing 6, is because I have extra sausage. Now, let's talk again about cost. So sausage can be not super expensive, but a little on the hefty side. However, if you use breakfast sausage opposed to Italian sausage, you're going to cut your budget definitely on that. It is a little cheaper. Another thing is it just adds this different flavor. And to be honest with you, I've had both sausages and I like the breakfast sausage better. So I'll do the Great Values. If they don't have Great Value ends, because sometimes they don't, I'll use the Jimmy Dean's, which tends to be a little bit more expensive. I usually will use 1.5 of the small tubes. You could get away with 1. You don't have to have 1.5. So typically that's what I do. So I have this already cooked. Remember, everything is pre-cooked. So I'm gonna throw this in here. This is 1.5 of the breakfast sausage, and it is the Great Values. They had it in stock today. So there's that. See how easy that was? So the one thing that I forgot to grab before I jumped on camera was the salt, pepper, and garlic. So let me grab that really quick. I have a little step stool in the kitchen because I'm not short, but I'm too short for these cupboards. Some of these cupboards up high are so tall. So there's no rhyme or reason to this. This is salt, pepper, and garlic to taste. Another thing while I'm adding this in, you could add, if you wanted a little spice, is red pepper. Red pepper flakes, absolutely you can add that in. And if not all your family likes that, then you can add it as a topping. So when you're doing salt, we use sea salt always. The only time I use any other salt is when I'm making bread. Don't be heavy-handed on this because you've already got your bacon in there that's salty. You've already got your sausage in there that's salty. So be very careful when you're doing the salt. You don't need a lot of salt. Now, what you do want a good healthy amount of is garlic. Now we like the granulated garlic more than the powder. So you're gonna wanna be a little heavy-handed. If you wanna put fresh cloves in here, you absolutely can. Another thing is at the store, we usually buy it at Costco, you could buy a container of garlic, little pieces like minced garlic. That is really good in here. I have done both, but you can see I was a little heavy-handed with this because garlic is definitely a centerpiece and a center flavor of this soup. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna mix everything together. Remember, this is already hot, so I can already feel the soup heating up. So you're gonna stir it. And then what we're gonna do is we are gonna add fresh kale. I just like to buy the kale in the bag. If you wanna buy it fresh and dice it all up, have at it. I've been there, done that, and I would just rather spend just a tiny bit more money. So this is not measured out. What I do, the way I do this, is I literally will just cover the top. I'll cover the top, that's it. So I'm guessing it's probably about 4 cups. I'll cover the top so you can see it's covered. This is the only thing that needs to cook down in your soup. So I saw the half a bag. So there's gonna be enough soup for 2 or 3 days. So a lot of times what I'll do is tomorrow when I put some in a pan and heat it up, what I'll do is just add a little bit more kale to the top, the fresh kale to the top, and kind of simmer it back down. So you are gonna know your soup is ready when your kale is soft, not mushy, soft. You don't want it to be crunchy and you don't want it to be mushy. So what I like to do is push this down into the soup, because as you push it down into the soup, the warmth of the soup and the soup, you know, is cooking, it's going to help cook the kale. And you know, we don't need to really cook the soup because the soup, everything in the soup is already done. We just really want all the flavors to infuse within themselves, and it's just gonna make such a rich soup. Guys, this soup is so delicious. Now, what I like to do is top it with Parmesan cheese. You could buy the bag kind. I like to buy the fresh and do the Parmesan cheese over the top. You don't have to. Another thing that this is awesome is make some homemade breadsticks or make some homemade bread with this. It is wonderful with breadsticks, or even bread. You can make bread and then do garlic bread, and then just slice it up, and you could kind of dip your pieces of bread into your soup. It just makes for such a good meal. So guys, I know this recipe is just a tad bit more expensive than the things that I normally do, but I promise this crock pot is ginormous. It's huge. And we are gonna get so many meals out of this, and we're even gonna be able to share it. So, and sometimes we get so many bowls of soup out of this is I don't want it to go bad because we get tired of it. So what I'll do is I'll take part of it, and I'll put it in the freezer. And what I'll do is we'll come back to it in a couple of weeks. I'll throw it in a pan, and then we've got soup again. So when you do that, I always suggest you do low and slow on that. So if you decide to freeze part of it and you're gonna pull it back out in a couple of weeks, put it in a pan on low to medium heat, but stay on the lower side and let it just kind of melt into soup again slowly. You could always put it back in your crock pot too for it to come back to life. And then if you don't have kale, you don't have to add kale, but you could add, if you have extra kale and you're gonna freeze part of it, throw some of that kale in to your soup before you freeze it, and then as it's thawing out, you could do that. The only risk that you get is sometimes you get mushy kale. So that's the only downfall of putting the fresh in there, but it all kind of comes into itself, so it may not really be a big deal to you. I tend to make sure that the kale is cooked down into my soup before I freeze it. So if I do know I'm gonna freeze half of this and I do have kale left, I will just throw it back in a pan, kind of simmer it back down, get the kale just cooked through, and then I will, put it in the freezer after it's cooled down, and then we'll have a meal in a couple weeks. So this is going to get you a lot of meals. Another thing is this is a really great after church supper, or if you're having people over. This is such a great soup to have because people will comment, it's a soup that's loved by so many. So if you're having concerns, you don't know what people like, just do a basic soup like this. This is a creamy soup. So do something like this and have some breadsticks. Have something along that lines of some kind of bread, and it will be a completed meal. You can make, some iced tea, or you can, have a nice bottle of wine, and then you would have such a great meal. So guys, do not dismiss this soup. It is absolutely fantastic. I think you guys will love it. I will put the recipe down in the description box. So you can grab it there unless you followed along. I tried to talk slow and tried to really be really thorough so it was easy for you guys. But thank you guys so much for coming to my kitchen and hanging out with me. I appreciate you guys so much. Don't forget, follow along, so make sure you're subscribing and liking this video. You can follow along on our Instagram or Facebook page on Sweet Pickins Reno. We also have a website, shopsweetpickins.com, and we have a retail location here in Sparks, Nevada. We are inside Painted Tree. We are space W1. So guys, thank you so much, and I will see you soon because the next one we're doing is a sweet treat. Thank you all so much. Bless you.